Well, thanks for being here, everybody, this morning. So nice to see you all. We're really excited about the Mother's Day weekend, having a lot of beautiful weather headed our way, but the National Weather Service has forecasted higher temperatures than normal, almost up to 90 degrees potentially this weekend. And so sometimes these early heat events that happen in the year are more severe because our bodies haven't quite acclimated to the heat yet. So we're expecting a 35-degree swing today and tomorrow, and we want to make sure people are cautious about spending too much time in the sun, which can cause heat illness. Heat illness can be heat exhaustion or heat stroke, and these can be dangerous conditions for young and our elderly population, and also for people who have chronic medical conditions such as asthma or heart failure. So we want to make sure everybody's keeping an eye out for symptoms of heat illness in yourself and others. We want to make sure people are staying hydrated and taking cooling breaks, either by taking cool showers or seeking shade. Even a few minutes of cooling can help prevent these heat illnesses. Also want to send out a word of caution about getting into natural bodies of water this weekend. They can be especially dangerous, especially in late spring when mountain snow melts keep them cold and fast moving even as the air temperatures are rising. We want to make sure people keep an eye out for kids in these cool waters and make sure people are wearing life jackets in any body of water that may have currents going. Unfortunately, we lose people every year to drowning in these dangerous waters. Also want to encourage people to make a plan for the rest of summer. Start thinking about getting a fan or an air conditioning unit if you don't have one. These can be attained by calling 211 if you need help getting an air conditioning unit for your house or your apartment. And we also encourage people to go to our website, maltco.us/hot, for information about how to stay cool this spring and summer, and for information about accessing 211 resources. Last Mother's Day weekend, we had a heat rise as well, as you may remember, and there were over 20 emergency room visits for heat-related illness during that time. So we're really trying to make sure people stay cool and stay safe this Mother's Day weekend.
Spell your name, say your name.
Oh, yes. Richard Bruno, Health Officer for Multnomah County. BRUNO. Yeah, hey.
Over the last few years, we've seen more heat events here in the Portland area. From the health department perspective, has that changed guidance or has that changed the way you approach heat here in the Pacific Northwest?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very cautious about the effects of climate change affecting our environment and especially the effects on human health. And so heat can be one of the more deadly activities that can harm people. And so keeping an eye out for heat illness such as heat exhaustion and heat stroke is a really important thing to keep in mind. Heat exhaustion can be simply having excessive sweating. Some people may have rapid heartbeat or shallow breathing. They may get muscle aches or nausea or vomiting. We want to make sure you get people hydrated and in the shade pretty quickly if they start exhibiting any signs of heat exhaustion. And then the older brother to that is heat stroke, where people can start to get confused, maybe have loss of consciousness, maybe have seizures. These are very concerning and people need to get right to the emergency room if that happens.
What week will the cooling shelters open? I know we're not expecting super extreme temperatures, but is there sort of like a preliminary plan in place even this weekend?
We don't plan to open the cooling shelters as far as I know at the moment. We are meeting tomorrow morning to discuss the thresholds and the criteria. We have very specific thresholds that are also on our website, but I can read those off to you too. Typically, the thresholds include the first 90-degree day weather of the year, National Weather Service issuing a heat advisory, a heat watch, a heat warning, or a weather briefing. National Weather Service heat risk tool forecasting an area of the county that's at high risk or in the red area. Or a heat risk tool that forecasts area of the county at extreme risk, the magenta level. Currently, we're predicted to have it in the mild, the yellow area, with potentially in the orange moderate level on Friday and Saturday. So we're keeping a close eye, and we'll definitely let you know if we decide that we meet the thresholds and want to open up the cooling centers.
And it's supposed to be 90 tomorrow.
Yeah, it could reach 90 on Saturday, as I understand it. And so that's why we're meeting tomorrow to take a look at that and see how accurate a prediction that will be.
Gotcha. And then for people who are planning to go hiking or go to the water, are there specific areas they should avoid? And do you have any
Yeah, anybody who's outdoors for any prolonged period of time, hiking or walking around, make sure you stay hydrated, keep water with you, be able to take a shade break and go into the shade or take a cool shower if you need to. All of this is recommended because we want to avoid that heat illness, heat exhaustion.
Will there be any personnel monitoring the waterways at all? Any lakes, rivers this weekend?
In terms of
Like life, or not lifeguards, but just like, I know that, I don't know, just to look out for anything happening out there.
you know, we monitor temperatures. I don't think we have lifeguards in a lot of like the Sandy River or Willamette River specifically.
I guess the sheriff.
Yeah, they may have more information about
They
it.
have a river patrol unit, so I would reach out to the sheriff.
Can you just comment on, even though it's gonna be hot outside, the water's still gonna be cold?
That's right. Yeah. So even though the air temperature will be in the 80s and 90s potentially, the water temperature is still very cold from the mountain runoff. So those waterways haven't quite warmed up yet.
So should people go in the water?
I would say that be cautious about going into cold waterways like the Sandy River or the Willamette River right now. Don't spend too much time in that cold water, especially because our bodies haven't quite acclimated and the water temperature hasn't met the air temperature quite yet.
What's the level of concern for the unhoused population here in Portland? You know, oftentimes they're hanging out, you know, in the city center, asphalt pavement all around. It tends to get even hotter when the temperatures rise. You know, what's the level of concern this weekend and going into the summer?
Yeah, absolutely. Want to make sure that folks who are experiencing houselessness are able to get shade, get access to water. There's a lot of outreach groups that will be going out, giving water out to folks who need it. And yeah, we want to be very cautious about anybody who has extra exposure to the sun and staying outside for long periods of time. We will have the ability to have some cool places that are public, like our public libraries, malls like the Lloyd Center will be open. And these are places people can go to cool off if they need to.
Anything else?
Any questions?
I guess you already mentioned like signs of heat stroke.
Yes.
I guess when people do go in the water, how can you recognize if someone is having a medical crisis?
Yeah, we want to make sure that anybody who is outside for prolonged periods of time or in cold waters for periods of time, that somebody has an eye on them, especially the younger folks in our aging population. So we want to make sure people are, if they're experiencing any kind of signs of excessive sweating, any kind of signs of fast heartbeat, shallow breathing, muscle cramps, that could be a sign of heat exhaustion. And so we want to get people water quickly and shade quickly in those situations. So it's about monitoring people for safety. We also recommend life vests if people are going to go into those dangerous waters, because life vests can help prevent people from drowning in currents that may not be seen.
With the cold water temperatures, is hypothermia a risk?
Well, absolutely. I mean, so the water temperature is around the 40s right now. So as I understand it, Sandy River. So those waters, you know, people may not feel comfortable spending too much time in those cold waters, but if they do, yeah, definitely get out of the water and try and get into the warmer air temperatures to help kind of warm up from those. But yeah, we want to try to avoid those extremes. So that's really the goal. Avoid the high heats, the cold waters, try and get in comfortable conditions.
When it gets hot like this, are there any common themes or mistakes that people make that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think oftentimes the signs of dehydration start to occur when you're already pretty dehydrated. So I think the rule of thumb is to stay hydrated in advance and try and prevent dehydration by staying hydrated and drinking water, even though you may not quite be feeling thirsty quite yet.
How much water should you drink?
Well, it depends on your body size, but we recommend 8-ounce glass of water multiple times a day, depending on your body size. Children should be drinking, staying hydrated, and making sure that they're drinking enough water so that they're not experiencing any signs of dehydration.
You mentioned
Are there activities that people might be partaking in over the weekend that could make them more susceptible to dehydration, or they need to look out or be a little bit more cautious of if they're partaking in?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that you're doing outside where you're going to be extended periods outside in the sun, direct sun, whether it's hiking, walking around, biking, running, or just playing outside on a playground, especially in those areas that have a lot of asphalt. Those kind of heat islands, as we call them, they retain a lot of heat and they cause the air to be hotter than it would be in the shade. So making sure that people can take those shade breaks, take those cooling breaks, stay hydrated, and try and prevent heat exhaustion or heat stroke.
You mentioned all those people that went to the emergency room with heat-related illness last year. Is there anything that the county is doing differently this year to tackle like the early heat wave versus last year, just given it's kind of a similar situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have emergency medical services all over the county, there for people who need it. Want to try to avoid heat stroke, which would be, a trip to the emergency room, but we're there in case you need it, and please call if you need any assistance.
So no change in like the approach or anything?
No, we're not devoting any extra resources, but we're trying to get the word out, so I appreciate you guys being here so we can help kind of get this word out. Just reminders that it's really important to stay hydrated and stay cool this weekend.
Any recommendations for sunscreen and the frequency of reapplying?
Frequency of what?
Reapplying your sunscreen.
Ah.
A lot of people are just like, I did it this morning, and then they're just torched by the end of the day. Or they go like, I had SPF 15, I'm fine. So.
Great call, thanks. Always good to be cognizant of skin cancers and sunburns and other kinds of burns. So thanks for bringing that up. Absolutely, we want to make sure people are applying sunscreen if they're going to be directly in the sun for any extended periods of time. And we want to use an SPF that will be high enough to keep you protected for long periods of time, and reapplying that periodically. If it's SPF 15, for example, you want to apply it every 15 minutes. If it's SPF 90, you can do it every 90 minutes. You want to make sure that you're applying and reapplying to prevent any sunburn and extra, chance that you may get heat exhaustion or heat stroke.